everyone, this is the second video for the 3.09 lesson, and let's finish up the lesson reading. We were on page 716, and let's read the excerpt, and then we will begin the heading Stalin and the Soviet Union. Communism, fascism, both extremes. In theory, fascism and communism hold deeply opposing political and economic philosophies. But historically, both fascists and communists have established extremist governments that are more alike than different. Communists emphasize state-controlled property and industry rather than private ownership, with the supposed goal of achieving a classless society in which all people are treated equally. Fascists allow private ownership of property and business, reject the idea of equality for all, and glorify the nation above all individual interests. Both communism and fascist states tend to be ruled by dictators who use extreme measures to maintain political control, deny freedom of speech and press, and employ harsh reprisals against all who oppose them. Stalin and the Soviet Union. By 1928, through brutal and treacherous means, Joseph Stalin had established himself as the Soviet Union's dictator. Stalin was driven by one goal, to make communism victorious, first in Russia and then elsewhere. The first step, as he saw it, was to transform the Soviet Union, still devastated from World War I, into an industrial power. Stalin faced a choice. He could concentrate on the hungry people's energies either on building factories or on growing food. He chose the factories. He decided his people must starve if necessary. Beginning in 1929, Stalin's troops herded 20 million peasants into cities to work in factories. The rest were ordered into huge collective farms that covered thousands of acres. Many peasants who owned their own land and livestock resisted this drastic plan. Stalin forced them to obey. Those who rebelled against collectivization were marched into Siberia. It has been estimated that perhaps 15 million people were thus deported, and that about 3 million, mostly children, died along the way. The survivors ended up in brutal prison camps and many more died. Millions of peasants became, in effect, slaves on the Soviet Union's collective farms. Across a huge country, Stalin's Communist Party told farmers and factory workers exactly what was expected of them to produce. By the 1930s, Stalin's brutal plan to turn the Soviet Union into a worker state seemed to be succeeding. The Soviet Union was becoming an industrial powerhouse, producing steel, cars, tractors, and military goods. Stalin held sway as a totalitarian ruler, a dictator exercising complete control over the state and lives of its people, with a feared legion of secret police to enforce his will. When Hitler began grabbing European lands, British and French officials hoped that Stalin would join them in opposing the Führer. After all, Russia, that is the Soviet Union, had been the ally of Britain and France in World War I. But in August 1939, Europe was shocked when Stalin signed a treaty with Hitler. In this treaty, often called the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, the Nazis and Communists set aside their mutual loathing and agreed not to go to war with each other. They also secretly agreed to divide Poland between them. And we'll stop here and begin that next section with the next lesson. Let's go back. So you should have gone through your reading guide and check your answers with the lesson answer key. And now let's complete the communism versus fascism activity online. This online activity here. After World War I, fascist and communist leaders took over in Italy and Russia, and the boxes describe the characteristics and actions of each government. In the center box lists the characteristics that both governments shared. When you have finished, click Reveal to see if you are on the right track. Print your answers before you close the activity. So you have the three boxes, communism, fascism, and both. So you have to list out the differences between the two, and you can go back, and here is in this blue box some descriptions of communism and fascism, also on the preceding pages where it talks about fascism and communism over here. When you, where'd it go? When you feel you have completed that, check the reveal box, and you will see the different parts of communism, fascism, and both. In communism, government directs the economy. Theoretically, workers control the production of goods. Government owns most of the land, factories, and other resources. And theoretically, workers share property. In fascism, government maintains strict control over economic activity. Government makes sure private businesses serve the state's agenda. It glorifies the nations and its leaders. Asks citizens to put interests of the state above their own, often persecutes minorities. And in both, they're both ruled by dictators, both suppress oppression, claims individual liberties must be sacrificed for the greater good of society, and tends toward totalitarian control of people's lives, often uses war to expand and strengthen the state. Now let's do the Axis aggression activity. In the 1920s and 30s, Germany faced a deep internal crisis, culminating in the collapse of its economy. In the absence of debt payments from Germany and strapped with their own financial obligations to the United States, the Allies also slipped into economic recession. In Germany and Italy, dictators rose to power with the promises of prosperity and order. Military leaders took power in Japan. Soon the imperialist ambitions of these nations became evident. Why did the Axis powers seek to expand their territory? Number 1. Which three nations executed acts of aggression in the 1930s? These three nations form the Axis powers. Answer the questions by clicking the colored box labeled Axis powers in the legend and then clicking each country. Click check when you are done. So we're going to click the pink Axis powers, and what were the three ones that were the aggressor nations? Japan, Germany, and Italy. Let's check. Great job. Okay, moving on to number 2. The League of Nations protested the aggressive actions of Japan, and Japan responded by simply quitting the League. On the map, color the two areas Japan occupied as a result of its aggression in the 1930s. Click the Japan's aggression box and then click the areas on the map. Okay, it was Manchuria and China. Check. Or the eastern edge of China. Great job. Good. Next. When Mussolini launched an invasion of this African country, the League of Nations issued declarations critical of Italy and forbade the importation of some Italian goods. These actions had very little effect. On the map, color the African nation that was invaded by Italy in 1935 by clicking Italy's aggressions box in the legend and then clicking the country on the map. And that's going to be Ethiopia. That is correct. In 1933, Hitler withdrew Germany from the League of Nations. A few years later, he began rearming Germany and renewed the practice of conscription, which is forced military participation. In 1936, Hitler violated the Treaty of Versailles and marched German troops into the region that was supposed to act as a buffer between Germany and France. Color this area on the map by clicking the Germany's aggressions box in the legend and then clicking on the area on the map. Okay, and that's going to be the Rhineland, was the buffer between, as you can see, whoops, not France. Oh, I can't click on it. I want to unclick France. See, the Rhineland is pointing to that little area that's between Germany and France. Yes, and it was right. Number 5, 2 years later, Hitler ordered his army into a country south of Germany and announced that he was annexing it to the German Reich. Color this country using the Germany's aggression box, and that's going to be Austria. Check, good job. Next, in 1938, Hitler threatened to invade one of the new nations created at the end of World War I. He demanded the northwestern part of this nation, inhabited by millions of German-speaking people, be turned over to Germany. Exercising a policy of appeasement, Great Britain and France gave in to Hitler's demands. Not only did Hitler gain the northwestern part of this nation, he also seized the rest of it. Color this nation as one of Germany's aggressions. And that's going to be Czechoslovakia. And we are correct. Next, on September 1st, 1939, Hitler attacked yet another country. After this aggressive act, Great Britain and France abandoned their policy of appeasement and declared war on Germany. Identify this country on the map by coloring it. Click the Germany's aggressions box, then click on the country, and that's going to be Poland. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and war began. And that's it. Or not almost it. What explains the aggressive behavior of Germany, Japan, and Italy during the 1930s? Why were they invading other countries and occupying regions outside their borders? The answer, for the most part, lies in the natural resources which they acquired for their growing industries. And if we click View, we'll see where these industries were located and what they were. And you also get a word, resources, that you should write down. But let's look at the resources. Like, look here in Ethiopia, we have gold, copper, natural gas. No wonder Italy was invading Ethiopia. In this area here, we have oil, iron ore, natural gas, graphite, copper, and lead. In China, Japan was really looking for things like tin, natural gas, oil, aluminum, lead, and iron ore. Things they all needed to industrialize. So copy down the word resources, copy and paste or write it down, and then make sure that you go to the 3.09 checkpoint and use your keyword in there if that's what it indeed asks for. But let me just check that there was no other further nope, just taking the quiz at the end. So that concludes the 3.09 lesson. Be sure you spell your keyword correctly in the box. Good luck!